It's the question no one wants to ask, yet it lingers in the back of all our minds. Are we on the brink of World War III? Recently, a chilling statement from a Ukrainian citizen went viral. We are already in World War III. The world just doesn't know it yet. Is this just fear-mongering, or is there truth to it? Today, we unpack the escalating global tensions, starting with the Russia-Ukraine war, and explore what the consequences could be for all of us. The idea that we are entering World War III may seem extreme, but the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict has set the stage for a crisis with global repercussions. This war, now nearing its third year, is no longer just a regional issue. It has drawn in global powers, strained international alliances, and shifted geopolitical landscapes. At the heart of the conflict is Russia's attempt to reassert its dominance over Ukraine, a former Soviet state, which has aspirations of aligning with the West. This clash of ideologies has led to untold devastation, with thousands of lives lost and millions displaced. Beyond the immediate tragedy, the conflict has become a proxy war between major global powers. The United States and NATO allies have thrown their support behind Ukraine, supplying billions of dollars in military aid. President Joe Biden's administration has sent advanced weaponry, including HIMARS rocket systems and air defense technologies, while European countries have pledged tanks and ammunition. For Russia, this support is seen as direct interference, and Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned that Western involvement is pushing the world closer to a catastrophic escalation. But what are the consequences of this escalation? The first and most obvious is the risk of the conflict spilling beyond Ukraine's borders. Russia has already targeted Ukrainian infrastructure near NATO member countries like Poland. A miscalculation or stray missile could spark an Article 5 response from NATO, which mandates collective defense. In such a scenario, the involvement of 31 NATO countries against Russia could quickly spiral into a full-scale global war. The second consequence is the economic toll. Sanctions on Russia have sent shockwaves through the global economy. Energy prices skyrocketed in 2022 as Europe scrambled to replace Russian oil and gas imports, leaving consumers worldwide to bear the brunt of inflation. Developing countries, in particular, are grappling with food shortages as the war disrupts Ukraine's role as one of the world's largest grain exporters. Militarily, the war is draining global arsenals. The US and European nations are depleting their stockpiles to support Ukraine, raising concerns about readiness should another major conflict arise. At the same time, Russia has deepened its military ties with countries like China, Iran, and North Korea. This growing axis of power poses a direct challenge to Western dominance. China's role is particularly critical. While Beijing has officially called for peace, it has also provided diplomatic and economic support to Russia, buying discounted energy and avoiding outright condemnation of the invasion. If China were to escalate its involvement, the balance of power could shift dramatically. Beyond the immediate military and economic impacts, this crisis is reshaping global alliances. The BRICS nations, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have gained momentum in their push to reduce reliance on Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Many countries in the global South are wary of picking sides, instead focusing on non-alignment as they navigate rising tensions. Meanwhile, public sentiment across the globe is divided. In the West, support for Ukraine remains high, but concerns are growing about the sustainability of continued aid. On the other hand, Russian propaganda has successfully garnered sympathy in parts of Africa and Asia by framing its actions as resistance against Western imperialism. As the conflict drags on, the question remains, how far are global powers willing to go? The Biden administration has faced criticism at home for the billions spent on Ukraine, with some arguing those resources are needed for domestic challenges. Yet, Biden has made it clear that defending Ukraine is not just about one nation, it's about preserving the rules-based international order. If this order collapses, the consequences could be dire. A world where might makes right would encourage authoritarian regimes to pursue territorial ambitions unchecked. Already, analysts point to rising tensions in other parts of the world, such as China's claims over Taiwan and ongoing disputes in the South China Sea. The lessons of Ukraine are being closely watched by both allies and adversaries, setting a precedent for how future conflicts might unfold. So, are we entering World War III? The answer depends on whether diplomatic efforts can prevail over the current trajectory of escalation. The United Nations has been largely sidelined, unable to mediate effectively due to the deep divisions among its Security Council members. Meanwhile, bilateral talks between Russia and Ukraine remain stalled, with both sides entrenched in their demands. The path to de-escalation requires compromise, but achieving that is easier said than done. For Ukraine, sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable. For Russia, abandoning its ambitions in Ukraine would be seen as a humiliation, something Putin's regime cannot afford. The West, for its part, must weigh the risks of continued involvement against the potential fallout of inaction. If the current trends continue, we could see a world increasingly divided into competing spheres of influence, reminiscent of the Cold War. Technology and cyber warfare would likely play a key role, as nations leverage AI and cyber attacks to undermine each other without resorting to conventional warfare. Such a scenario would leave no country unaffected, as the interconnected nature of today's world ensures that even regional conflicts have global ripple effects. Ultimately, the question isn't just whether we're heading into World War III, but whether we can avoid it. History has shown that wars often begin not with a single decisive event, but with a series of miscalculations and unchecked escalations. The Russia-Ukraine war has created a precarious situation where a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. The world is watching. The decisions made by global leaders in the coming months will determine whether this century is defined by cooperation and resilience or by division and destruction.